Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're joining us from around the world. Let me start by, first of all, noting that there is closed captioning at the bottom of the screen. Okay. I'm Beth O'Connell, the Vice President of the International Convocation of Unitarian Women, or simply IWC. At IWC, we support programs around the world that empower women and girls. And every year we host events at this NGO CSW forum. At CSW, we hear from diverse groups of women. And this year we wanted to focus on one group whose voices perhaps have not been heard enough. That's women with disabilities. According to the United Nations, worldwide, there are an estimated 1 billion people with disabilities. The reality is any of us at any time could find ourselves having to deal with a physical impairment, be it a mobility or hearing or visual impairment, especially as we age. So we hope that this panel discussion will increase your awareness of the issue and that all of us can learn from the two experts on our panel. They're advocates for the rights of women with disabilities, working for accessibility both in the digital world and the physical world. We're honored to have with us Virginia Ossana from Women Enabled International, and Sheila Inmenzo Aggarao, who represents an organization for visually impaired women in the Philippines. And she's also part of the inclusive Generation Equality Collective, and she'll tell us what that's all about. But before we turn to them, I'd like us to start with the inspiration for this event. During the COVID pandemic, IWC launched a small program to bridge the digital divide. Working with our partner in Romania, we provided laptops to some disadvantaged young women and girls. Two of the recipients are young women with disabilities, and one of them is with us today to share a bit of her personal experience of crossing the digital divide. We want to welcome Andrea Mihály. She's from the Transylvania region of Romania, an ethnic Hungarian area, so she will speak in Hungarian. But don't worry, she brought a wonderful interpreter with her, the Reverend Zsuzsanna Kiss of the Hungarian Unitarian Church, and she will ask Andrea a few questions and then translate her responses into English for all of us. So Reverend Kish and Andrea, over to you.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. We are trying to introduce ourselves. So first, I will ask Andrea in Hungarian some questions, and when she answered them, I will try to translate or interpret. So, Andrea, egy kicsit mutatkozzál be, légy szíves, mesélj egy kicsit magadról, az életedről, arról, hogy hogyan élsz, hol élsz, mit szeretsz. So first, tell us a little bit about you. Where do you live? How do you live? And about your life. So I am Mihály Andrea, and I live in Nyáradszentmárton. I am 26 years old, and I live in this little and lovely village in Transylvania, Romania. I like to live. I like very much to live in this village because it's a quiet place and clear and and mit mondtál utoljára, nem értettem. And everybody knows everybody. Okay, hobby. About your hobbies. Igen. So my hobby is to use my electric moped and to go my grandparents in the next village. And it's the best part of the day, of every day, if the weather allows me. Okay, the next question, a második kérdés. Kerekesszéket használsz, és mik ennek a kerekesszék használatnak a nehézségei, és mi az, amiben megkönnyíti az életedet? Most elmondom angolul, addig gondolt ki. So you use a wheelchair, and what difficulties do you have, and what is the positive in it?
No, nehézségeim le van növelve. Így nagyon nehéz. Ez nehéz.
So the difficulties are that I live in a paved street, so it's a little bit hard to go with the wheelchair, but the positive thing is that I can go. And a következő kérdés az, hogy hogy érezted magad, amikor megkaptad a laptopot? How do you felt when you got the laptop?
Nagyon örültem.
I was very glad and I was touched, and I was and I am very grateful for it. The next question is, hogyan használod a digitális technológiát? How do you use the digital technology? Did you have problems with it? Did you need help? And who helped you? Tehát, hogy hogyan használod, miben könnyíti meg az élet? Voltak-e problémáid vele? Ki tanított meg használni? Okay. Okay. So it helps me a lot, and it's very easy to be in the world with digital technology. I didn't have problems because I learned use phone and laptop when I was child, and with this new laptop, my brother helped me to start or to start to work or use this laptop. The next question is how how this digital technology helps you, and for what do you use it? Következő kérdés az, hogy hogyan segít neked ez a digitális technológia, és hogyan használod?
Nagyon sokat segít. Én nem tudom keresni bármit. Olvasok, zenét olvasok. Barátaim vannak.
This digital technology helps me a lot because I am a curious person who likes very much to talk with friends, to read, and I can search on every topic in which I am interested. So I can watch movies. I can. It's makes easier to be in the real and in the virtual life. Okay, thank you, Andrea. Köszönöm szépen, Andrea. Záró gondolatot, ha szeretnél megosztani velünk. Thank you, Andrea. If you want to share us, what do you think about this?
Nagyon
Thank you very much for your help, and thank you very much the laptop, and God bless you, your life and your work.
Thank you, Andrea and Reverend Kish. Thank you so much. Andrea, we can really see how much you enjoy your life and with this new laptop and connecting with people around the world. We can share that. We share that joy too, that ability to connect with people from all over, like we're doing right now, people from all over the world joining us. So thank you very much, Andrea and Reverend Kish, for participating in this event.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Okay. Well, now let's turn to our expert in this area. And what we'll do is, after their presentations, we'll open up to questions from all of you. You can put your questions in the chat, or if you want, raise your hand to speak. Perhaps there's an experience with disability you'd like to share with us. So we'll do that after the presentations. So our first speaker is Virginia Ossana, and she's joining us from the UK. And she is a programs advisor with Women Enabled International. And that's an NGO which says it's working for human rights at the intersection of gender and disability. So Virginia, over to you.
Thank you so much, Beth, for the introduction, and thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today with such a wonderful panel. I am really grateful and happy for the opportunity. Before I begin, I would like to give a short visual description of myself. I am a Latina woman with short black hair, and I am wearing a white shirt with a black sweater on top. Behind me, I have a white background with the logo of Women Enabled International in purple at the top. I am a disabled woman myself, and I am originally from Argentina, although, as Beth pointed out, I am based in the UK. And today I'd like to focus my intervention on the importance that innovation and technology have for women with disabilities to access our rights, including, for instance, sexual and reproductive health and rights, but also in helping us build community, helping us build our capacity, and helping us advocate for our rights. And I want to, in that regard, to bring some examples of the work that we have been doing Women Enabled, including during the COVID-19 pandemic. Can I have the next slide, please? The next one after that. Thank you so much. So the first example that I want to give of our work is our response to the COVID-19 pandemic. As we know, the COVID-19 pandemic has heightened inequalities for women with disabilities. In 2020, to assess the impact of the pandemic, Women Enabled, together with 8 regional and national organizations of people with disabilities around the world, and with the support from the United Nations Population Fund, otherwise known as UNFPA, and UN Women, worked together to conduct a global study on the impact of the pandemic on women and gender non-conforming persons with disabilities, particularly in relation to our access to sexual and reproductive health and rights, to gender-based violence, to our access to essential goods and services, and other related rights. And why am I bringing it here to the session on technology today? Because in order to conduct this study, we put in place digital accessibility measures from the very beginning. This study that reached more than 300 people with disabilities and family members around the world was conducted using online consultations that had card services, so real-time subtitles like the ones that we have here today. We also had sign language interpretation or spoken interpretation as needed. And we also included built-in breaks. And we also used online surveys to have a variety of modes of participations to reach our population. And what we found in this study was that women and gender non-conforming persons with disabilities, we were facing increased barriers to sexual and reproductive health services. We were at heightened risk of experiencing gender-based violence, and we were facing challenges accessing basic goods and rights. And we also found that these impacts were similar across the world. Many of these challenges originated or heightened because of lack of accessible technology. For instance, COVID-19 and gender-based violence hotlines, many a time did not have sign language interpretation videos or options for text-to-speech services, which meant that the members of the deaf community were left out and could not access support services. Can I have the next slide, please? The next example that I want to bring in relation to rights and the intersection with technology is our work in the Pacific region. As I was mentioning, the COVID-19 pandemic heightened barriers that we were already experiencing, but the lack of innovation and use of accessible technology has been a long-term barrier for women and young people with disabilities to access sexual and reproductive health services. In research that we conducted with the Pacific Disability Forum, with the support of the UNFPA Pacific region and the Australian Department for Foreign Affairs and Trade, that was a long name, we identified that in Samoa, one of the countries in which we conducted the research, in part due to lack of accessible telecommunications options available, sexual and reproductive health services were only primarily available to people with disabilities through in-person visits to providers. And we also found that none of the facilities, be it private or public ones, had the capacity yet for accessible measures, like I mentioned, talk-to-text hotlines or other accessible mechanisms for people to solicit services independently. And although we found that organizations of persons with disabilities in the region, they do a fantastic job of facilitating those appointments for people with disabilities. People with disabilities should have an accessible way to communicate directly and independently with service providers. In another one of the countries that we in which we did our research, which is Vanuatu, we discovered that the extreme shortage of sexual and reproductive health services and the lack of also trained midwives, particularly in rural and remote areas in the country, was forcing nurses to provide support to people who were in labor and about to give birth via phone calls, which meant, once again, as I was mentioning, that people from the deaf community were left out and could not access the support, cannot access the support that they need. These research findings and others examples of it are available in 3 needs assessments reports that we of the research that we conducted in Samoa, Vanuatu, and also in Fiji. These reports not only contain information relating to access to sexual and reproductive health and rights, but also to the right to live a life free of gender-based violence, the right to exercise legal capacity. And these reports also contain a set of recommendations for the states to put in place to address these barriers. And I will be sure to link all of the resources that I'm talking about in the chat once I'm finished with the presentation. Can I have the next slide, please? Great, thank you so much. So I wanted also to provide a few examples of what can be done to ensure accessible services via the technology. So, for instance, we can ensure crisis hotlines offer a texting option. Like I said, we can ensure that there are sign language videos in communications that we put out. We can also build our capacity to include to create inclusive digital spaces and communications materials. And this can look, for instance, if we're putting out flyers and we have some graphic materials that we want to share, we have to make sure that those images and graphics have image descriptions. So that is one way to make sure that that is accessible for people with visual disabilities. And another important point is to budget for and offer assistive technology for people who are looking for sexual and reproductive health services. Yeah. And can I have the next one, please? So those are a few of the examples, but there's more examples in the documents that I mentioned, which I will be sharing shortly. And the last example that I wanted to bring you today is related to the use of technology to build community, to build capacity, and to advocate and raise awareness of our rights. And I wanted to bring an example from the Latin American region. So the example that I want to bring is related to a project that Women Enabled has been working on for the past couple of years now, in which we provided logistical support to a group of advocates in the Latin American region to come together and assess the priorities of women with disabilities on the ground through online surveys and accessible virtual sessions, which included, again, real-time subtitles and sign language interpreters. The group discussed its priorities and the next steps they wanted to take. And they identified as one of their priorities, the political participation of women with disabilities in Latin America. They decided that they wanted to create a raising awareness campaign, and they set out to create this campaign by themselves. This campaign included social media posts and blog posts. Throughout this process, which was a year-long process to work on the campaign, the women with disabilities from this group became more comfortable using digital tools, such as emails, calendars, time converters, shared tools like Google Drive and Dropbox, and even graphic design software. And they created themselves even the graphic images that I have included one in my slide, which I'm going to describe now, that is in Spanish, but I wanted to put it there as an example. And it is a white background, and on that white background, there is a text bubble that reads, "Do you know what are political rights and why they are important for women with disabilities?" And that graphic was then used as part of the campaign to link it to one of the blog posts that women with disabilities in the region wrote themselves. And this was a very, very rewarding process, because we saw, and even I learned myself, some new digital skills to be able to work as a group, to work collectively towards raising awareness about our rights, and to work together towards a common goal and build community with fellow disabled women from Latin America. So it's been a really wonderful process. So that is the last one of my examples. I will be sure to include the links to everything all of the projects that I have mentioned now. And in my last slide, I've included the information to stay in touch with Women Enabled. We have our website, www.womenenabled.org. We have our communications inbox. I'm not going to say everything out loud. I'm just going to put it in the chat. Our blog, Rewriting the Narrative, which is a space for women and gender diverse people to talk about their experiences and elevate their voices. And it's a really wonderful space. So if you want to just submit a piece or just read about it, it is really a very incredible space. And the last bit is you can follow us also on social media. I'll be sure to include all of this in the chat. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Virginia. Thank you. I think you showed us how in society we send out this information about COVID, or we send out information about sexual and reproductive health, important health information to people, but we forget about the disabled community. We forget that there are people who have hearing and visual impairments, and that we need to adapt and account for them. There's just that awareness to add that to the government serves, or organizations need to add that to their information spreading, and that how effective that campaign in Latin America was with these advocates for disability rights. They took to the digital world and the digital tools to get out the message, and that is really a powerful way to do that. And you also reminded me that I too, as moderator, I should do a physical description. I am sitting in front of the logo of my organization, the International Convocation of Unitarian Universalist Women. I have reddish blonde hair, blue eyes. I'm American and Irish. I have two nationalities. I am wearing my eyeglasses right now so I can read all these wonderful slides that you're presenting. And am a retired journalist in Paris, and I am what they call a senior citizen. So, so that's who I am. Thank you, Virginia. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's move on to our next speaker. She is Sheila May Inmenzo Aggarao, and she is secretary of the nationwide organization of visually impaired empowered ladies, or NOVEL, in the Philippines. She will also talk about the Inclusive Generation Equality Collective and the Feminist Accessibility Protocol. She's a very busy woman. In fact, she's joining us from Cambodia, where she's attending another conference. And I'm glad that she's able to join us here at CSW. So Sheila, over to you.
Thank you so much, Beth, and for that introduction. And good day, everyone. Mabuhay. That's how we say hello in the Philippines. And this is Sheila, a woman with low vision. And my visual description is I have a chubby face. I have light brown skin. My hair is long, and my hair color are shades of black, blonde, and brown. And I'm wearing a black long sleeve top. And yeah, I will be sharing two things with you. It's about my local organization who participated in a uh, multi-sectoral initiative in the Philippines during the height of the COVID pandemic, and also a global initiative, the Inclusive Generation Equality Collective and the Feminist Accessibility Protocol. By the way, my background are the logos of Inclusive Generation Equality Collective, which is in red, blue, and white, with black text, and the logo of novel is blue and white. It's a silhouette of an eye, and inside it is a person identified as a woman with a white cane facing right, and the letters of novel in blue. Okay. So next slide, please. So the title of the project that we had in 2020 was community-based peer monitoring on the situation of women with disabilities amidst COVID pandemic. Quite a mouthful title. Actually, it is a partnership between organizations of women with disabilities and also the Commission on Human Rights, Gender Equality, and Women's Human Rights Center. It's the National Human Rights Institution of the Philippines and the United Nations Population Fund Philippines. So in this slide, you will see the title of the project, and around it are the logos of the organizations who were involved. It was a peer monitoring because women with disabilities were monitoring the situation and supporting their fellow women and girls with disabilities, as well as mothers and parents of girl children with disabilities. So the monitoring lasted for 5 months, from March to August 2020, which was the height of the lockdown and quarantine in the Philippines. Next slide, please. So there were a total of 2,382 interviews done across the country. It is an online it was based online, so interviews were done via messenger, and sometimes also during through phone calls and text messages. So in this slide, you will see a colorful map of the Philippines against a black background, and pointing towards it are the three main points of coordination, which is in Luzon, National Capital Region or Metro Manila. Second is for the Visayas region, which is the Region 7, and the Region 10, which is in Mindanao. So we were scattered around the country, and we're conducting the interviews through online. One woman with disability interviewing another woman with disability from another province, from another town, from another island. So yeah. So it really had a wide reach. So not only the interviews were conducted online, also the consultations on how to create the questionnaire or the tool for the interview, as well as the regular meetings of the peer monitors, up to the sharing of the results and the recommendations, were also done via online. And accessibility and support requirements of both the peer monitors and the participants were ensured during this time. And uh, it also provided communication allowance for both participants and also the peer monitors. So and there was also honorarium. So in a way, it also helped the peer monitors, especially many of us lost our jobs during the pandemic, and also the members of our household. So it in a way, it also helped with the income generation. And well, project has its own limitations, the connectivity, and also the problems in terms of the gadgets of both the monitors and the participants, and also, survey fatigue also affected some of the, the flow, and also the other interviews. Next slide, please. So the community-based peer monitoring leverage the role of organizations of persons with disabilities, particularly of women with disabilities, to gather data, surface the issues of the sector, and provide evidence-based recommendations to address human rights issues. It strengthened the network amongst women with disabilities, as well its partnership with the government and non-government organizations. And it also contributed to the individual and organizational empowerment of women and girls with disabilities, it help us to be immersed in the sector-specific issues, and also monitor the response and call for accountability of the government. Yeah. Next slide, please. So in this slide, you will see a picture of an Android tablet that was provided to us by the Commission on Human Rights and the UNFPA Philippines. So it helped us. It supported our participation in the peer monitoring, and we also use this tablet for us to, continuously learn, and also help in our education and work, and for leisure, especially those times of the pandemic. Next slide, please. So now we will go to our global initiative, which is the Inclusive Generation Equality Collective. And who are we? We'll find out in the next slides. So the collective was, or the IGEC, or the collective, was formed in 2020 during the Generation Equality Forum. We are composed of feminists with disabilities and allies working on the intersection of gender and disability worldwide. The collective is our platform to raise our voices, and for our allies to promote and fight for our gender rights, gender and disability rights, and justice. Next slide, please. Presently, the collective has 150 members in its listserv, and the active members are around 30 individuals and organizations. So you will see here at the right side of the slide a world map showing the countries that are active in the collective, you will find that most of the membership comes from the Americas, and there are some from the Europe and Africa, and in Asia, well, I think it's only the Philippines. So we are really striving and really aiming that membership of the collective in other regions would also expand in the coming months and years. Next slide, please. So now we go to the Feminist Accessibility Protocol. Next slide, please. So what is it for? The protocol is a document. It is a response to the barriers that we face during the Generation Equality Forum. So later on, I will discuss some more about these barriers. As I've said, it's a document that contains commitments that will ensure all gender equality spaces will be fully inclusive and accessible of women, girls, and gender diverse persons with disabilities. So this is not only in-person meetings or events, but also about online activities as well. So it intends to guide all the actors in their promotion and ensure of gender equality at all levels, from international to the local level. Next slide, please. So the barriers that we face during the excuse me, Generation Equality Forum. So we faced barriers during the registration, logging in, and navigating through the space because it was mostly done online, and participation in the online activities. So for this one, we really had a hard time navigating through the online platform, especially for the people who use screen readers and people who may need simple or plain text, an easy to read language. So there were confusions, and there were uh, problems logging in and understanding the information. So it really delayed our participation, and to get the proper information, to access the proper information about the forum. And once we get into the forum, and we tried to join the different events, unfortunately there were lack of accessibility features such as international sign or local sign, as well, sign language as well, and also closed captioning and audio description for people who need it. And also, we love advocating, of course, about accessibility and disability inclusion, but we felt that we were stuck because of the barriers that we face. We were stuck with the advocacy of accessibility, and we were not really able to participate in other spaces, such as talking about the gender related topics in the forum. Next slide, please. So who participated in the development of the protocol? So it was a very consultative process, and which was done through the surveys, focus group discussions, and interviews that was participated by 37 countries, 109 women, girls, and gender diverse persons with disabilities, and also participated by 24 UN agencies, international feminist organizations, and states. So at the right side is a map showing the countries who participated in the development. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So everything was done online. So we really maximized the online platform, from the planning to the consultation to the formulation of the protocol, up to the launching and the advocacy. It's only now that we are able to promote it in person during the here at the CSW. So next slide. Okay, so now we'll see the different commitments under the protocol. So there are 13 commitments, and it has a broader, the protocol has principles that were outlined not just for meetings and events, but for the broader operations of the different actors and organizations. Yeah. So it's also an important, it's also a way to guide the different actors in fulfilling their human rights obligations, especially the right to access and also accessibility as a precondition for inclusion. Next slide, please. So I will be sharing a summary of the commitments. So the first commitment is about the ensuring that women, girls, and gender diverse persons with disabilities are part of all the discussions and decision making at all levels, and not just about disability specific discussions and decision making. Next slide, please. So ensuring that we are also leaders and not just participants in activities, and all of our accessibility support requirements and reasonable accommodation needed will be provided. Next slide, please. So of course, we cannot mobilize these things without ensuring disability inclusive budgeting for the accessibility and support requirements, and also ensuring proper compensation for our participation. And of course, the next slide, the next commitment talks about guidance, not only for the organizers, but also for other people or organizations who are involved in these meetings and events, such as contractors, suppliers, and other speakers. Next slide, please. It also talks about the registration. So the process of inclusion should start at the very beginning during the registration, with also about consulting the accessibility and support requirements of the participants with disabilities. And the next bullets is about ensuring physical communication, information, and also supporting accessibility, and also supporting people with psychosocial and neurodiverse identities. Next slide, please. Okay. So of course, it's not only about the pre and during the activity, but also post-activity. So dissemination of outcomes and conclusions in accessible formats, and still involving us up to the evaluation and monitoring. So next commitment is about continuous learning of accessibility standards and rights-based approach. As we all know, accessibility standards also evolve and improve. So it should always be a continuous process. Next slide, please. And of course, practicing the existing accessibility standards, and of course, institutionalizing accessibility standards within organization. And lastly, dismantling barriers and forms of intersectional discrimination that may hinder our full and effective inclusion and participation in gender equality spaces. So the protocol is produced in accessible formats, and I can share to you the link where you can find these different accessible formats. Next slide, please. And for my second to the last slide is a call to everyone, an encouragement to everyone. If you are a representative of a state, a part of a feminist organization, or a disability specific organization, or any organization, we encourage you to sign up to the Feminist Accessibility Protocol, and be one of us in ensuring that the full and effective inclusion and participation, and also leadership of women, girls, and gender diverse with disabilities. Next slide, please. So thank you for this opportunity to share, and again, mabuhay. Back to you, Beth.
I have a question.
Thank you, Sheila. Thank you so much. You know, this feminist accessibility protocol, as you were saying, it came out of the the experience of all these barriers at the Generation Equality Forum, I think it would be a good idea to remind our audience what was the Generation Equality Forum.
Yes. Okay. The Generation Equality Forum is like a conference, an event wherein states and non-government organizations and different community-based organizations, feminists and other groups come together, and the states and different organizations release commitments to ensure that gender equality will be accelerated. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but this Generation Equality Forum commitments are due up to 2025. Yeah.
Okay, and so I believe that was a UN organized forum, or UN Women. Yes, am I right?
Yes, it was organized by UN together with I think Mexico and France as the main states who sponsored the event.
Right, right. So that's an interesting point, that even the UN has to look at itself and the way it's organized, and so to make the events accessible to people with disabilities. So again, that's as I gather you're saying, that's the impetus for this feminist accessibility protocol, is to a wake-up call to everyone.
Yep, you're right, Beth. It's really a wake-up call to everyone. And actually, we're really advocating at the UN level, particularly for UN women. And well, at this moment, they have positively receiving our encouragement and advocacy to sign to the protocol, but we really hope that it would be realized very soon, as part of their commitments, and also as part of really ensuring that no one will be left behind.
Right. Let's have Virginia join us here too on the screen. Virginia, want to come join us here?
Yes, lovely to join you
on the screen here. Good. Do you want to add something about the feminist accessibility protocol? I saw you writing some things in the chat.
Yes. First of all, I wanted to thank you, Sheila, for giving that very detailed account of the work that the collective has been doing, and the work on the protocol as well. I wanted to add that one of the things that I was sharing in the chat first was the links to all of the documents I referenced in my intervention, but also I just shared the links to the protocol both in English and in Spanish. And we would be really happy if you would like to sign the protocol. As Sheila mentioned, it is open for sign-ons, particularly from organizations, feminist organizations from the civil society, and also from states and organizations, UN agencies as well. So yeah, we would love if you would read it, find more information. If you would like to reach out to us and ask more questions, we're happy to respond to those. But I think Sheila did a great job of summarizing all of that information. I saw a question from someone in the chat relating to the commitments that Sheila just mentioned, and wanted to take the opportunity to respond that question. The commitments are made by a variety of actors, and including states, including the private sector, so private companies, NGOs like ourselves, and organizations from the feminist movement. If you give me a moment, I can look for the commitment board, which is a website where all of the commitments are located, and there are more than, I think, almost 4,000 by now. And wanted to point out that last year we did an initial scan of those commitments and found out that less than 5% included a reference to disability. So that those were like 114 commitments mentioning disability. So there is a lot of work to be done still, but I think this important work that the collective is doing will do a great amount in that direction. So yeah, that's what I wanted to add.
Okay,
And
great.
can look for that link and put it in the chat in a moment.
Okay, great. Thanks, Virginia. So we're open now to questions from all of you. You can write them in the chat, or I invite you to raise your hands if you'd like to speak. As I said, maybe share an experience with disability that you would like to share with all of us. And so please raise your hand. I see one person, Carol Houston. Do you want to unmute yourself, Carol, and let's hear from you.
Hello. I am Reverend Carol Houston. I'm engaged. I'm the advocacy chair for International Women's Convocation for our work at the UN, and it's a delight to be with you on this parallel event. Thank you to the speakers. Wonderful information. Thank you to Beth for the organizational work. Really good to have that with to have this time to talk. I am legally blind. I am a senior citizen. My hair is gray. I wear it long. I live in New York City. I am in my dining room. There's things behind me that are in my dining room, and you may hear some noise from the city. Actually, I'm getting some construction noise today. It's not there right now, but it might come. The blindness has come over me gradually. It's macular degeneration. I was normally sighted until about 7 or 8 years ago, and then my sight has been getting fuzzier, cloudier, and at this point I do count myself as legally blind. I think visual difficulty is very complicated. There are specific problems that maybe just mine, or maybe everybody has them, but I don't know. But a lot of people think if you just make the print larger, that's fine, and everybody will be good with that. But I have problems focusing in the middle of I can't see whole words. If it's too large, I can't see the whole words, and that slows me down in reading. And I will just share one digital problem that I have in this wonderful world of Zoom meetings all the time. I cannot use the chat, and it is, and not just because the chat is small. I can make it larger. I could read the chat, but chat items go away. They go away before I finish reading them. If I look at the chat, if I open the chat, yes, I can see it, but it moves, and I have problems refocusing. So it's a struggle to do anything with the chat during a meeting. And so I always, when I can, I request that things that are necessary for everyone to know be read out loud and not just left to chat communication. And I always appreciate getting an email or other ways to find the links afterwards. You can't just help my particular visual problem by making the print larger. There are other complications to it. So that's the experience I'm sharing. Any responses would be welcome. I also have to say that it is necessary to do a certain amount of advocacy for yourself in many, many contexts. Organizations I work with, I bring the word about not depending on the chat and making letters larger on screens. So I do some self-advocacy. I'm going to try and find more time to work with advocacy organizations, though. You're reminding me that I should be doing some of that as well for the intersection of gender and disability. So thank you.
Sheila, Virginia, have any advice for Carol?
Yeah, I also experienced that same issue with you, Carol. Sometimes the chat box is not really that much accessible for us. Well, for me, it's really important that we raise this concern to, to the people who do these kinds of platforms. Like, for example, what we are doing right now, sending them, filing a report would also help, so that this will be flagged on them, because of course, if we do not report these kinds of accessibility issues, they might have missed it, or they might think that we're okay with their accessibility features. So yeah, um I think it's really important to report and let them know that their platform is not that much accessible. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Sheila. Okay, we have another person who'd like to speak up. Anne, would you like to unmute yourself and?
Yes,
and-
thank you for this
Uh-huh.
important program. My disability is hearing, and unlike what we were just talking about visually, I do use the chat and the saved transcript so I can read them later. But I also have an app that I discovered called AVA, AVA, and it gives me a live transcript of a program that's being talked, and I can use it in church. I can use it in a conversation on a cell phone. It's been a game changer for me. It's not perfect, but it's a step up for hearing disabilities. And we are aging, that's for sure. But I just really appreciate the attention to bringing in all the different sexuality issues into this, coupling them with the disabilities. So thank you.
Beth, you muted.
Okay. I said, are you familiar with this app that that Anne mentioned?
No, I actually am not. So thank you so much for sharing that. I will be sure to explore that. Thank you so much. And also wanted to respond to the previous question that was that was raised in the previous experience. I would say, apart from what Sheila just mentioned, that doing collective work to advocate for our rights, that is, for me personally, so much easier than to do it individually, because advocating for rights individually can be a very lonely experience. And I think in building community, in building, in engaging in collective work, all of that becomes easier. So I would encourage anyone and everyone who want to advocate for their rights to engage in collective work, because it is a different experience, and it brings so much to learn from other people as well. So I wanted to add that too.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Virginia. Shulamit, I see your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Beth. Yeah,
Hi.
I do agree. Sorry.
Go ahead,
Uh,
Sheila, go ahead
yeah,
first.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree with what Virginia has said about doing things collectively. And you know, the feminist accessibility protocol was not only developed by the collective. It is really a collective experience of the women and girls and gender diverse persons with disabilities around the world. So it was like a collection of, you know, the experiences that happened not only during the generation equality forum, but, you know, years of being excluded from just gender equality and other spaces. So, you know, in a way, the people that we worked with and that we interviewed felt that, you know, um uh it's not only them that, you know, in this advocacy or in this fight, that we are collectively pushing for, you know, the promotion of our rights to access, our rights to accessibility. And we really want to be part of the gender equality spaces. And also, just to highlight that uh there are really good applications available online now assisting people with disabilities. But yeah, the problem is for that many of us do not have, cannot access it because it's expensive. It is paid, it's not for free. So how about women and girls and gender diverse persons with disabilities who cannot afford it? So it's really, and do not have the gadget as well. So it's really important also that we should lobby for to our governments as well, that, you know, these things should be supported. Not just, you know, the accessible online platforms are and apps are useless if you do not have access to gadgets and also connectivity and also subsidized or free applications. And uh yeah, and you know, it's part of the SDG 5 that the ICT should support the empowerment of women, and that includes us. So yeah, if they really want to achieve that, then they should make do something also about it. Yep.
Right, right. Yes, gender equality must include women with disabilities. And you're right that there are digital tools out there, but we have to make the devices and learning how to use them accessible to women. Okay, so we have another question or comment from Shulamit. Shulamit, can you join us?
Hi, I'm Shulamit. I am a late 50s woman, cisgender. I have mostly gray hair with a bit of brown left. I am wearing a combination of blue and rose. So that's for the physical part. I am a woman with multiple disabilities, including both physical and neurodiversity, and issues of anxiety, so mental health issues, and as well as noise deaf, Levi deaf, they call it in Dutch, where if I'm in a group of people, I can't focus on the person who's actually talking because I hear everybody else's voices just as loud. So I noticed in the protocol, oh, and I'm also the accessibility and inclusion point person for the European Unitarian Universalists. So thank you for all of this. It's great information. I noticed, my question now, I noticed that there was mention of neurodiversity, but I want to know more specifics. How does the protocol help those of us who are neurodiverse to be more included? When we went to first all digital because of COVID, I had more social contacts than ever before in my life. But now with the rush to go back to more of a mix or more in person, that's starting to be lost. But what do the protocols really fully say about including people who are neurodiverse?
Sheila, you want to take that?
Yeah. Well, I will I may not able to answer it fully, but actually, the protocol talks about people with psychosocial disabilities and neurodiverse with people, and mainly the support about, for example, having a space for them uh, to have a quiet time, for example, or more time to process the information, and also making the formats of the different documents in, for example, easy to read format or in plain text format, and also ensuring that, if they need a person who will support them during their participation in meetings and events. This will be provided. Those are just some of the general things that uh, uh, sorry, those are just some of the things that can be found on the protocol. But of course, every person and every neurodiverse individuals has their own specific requirement, and that's where the reasonable accommodation will enter or will take place. Yeah, or maybe Virginia also and other colleagues from the collective have also answers to this
Yes,
question. Yeah,
I
thank
see
you.
that my colleague Alana, who works in the collective as well, has her hand raised, so I will let her take the floor.
Thank you, Virginia. And thank you for the question. It's a very important one, because the spirit of the protocol is what Sheila said before, to bring inclusion through accessibility as a tool to ensure participation in gender equality spaces. So instead of a long list of adaptations to ensure accessibility and reasonable accommodations, the spirit of the 13 commitments of the Feminist Accessibility Protocol is to, one, listen to the needs of each person willing to participate in an event, asking for accessibility requirements and reasonable accommodations beforehand in registration process. So measures like that to adapt to each person, because accessibility doesn't look the same for all. So among the over 100 people with disabilities that we interviewed or joined for focus groups for the Feminist Accessibility Protocol, there were some who are neurodivergent, but we are cognizant of the fact that they don't represent the whole community, because accessibility and the examples brought here through the questions demonstrate that accessibility is different for depending from person to person. So that's the spirit of the protocol, and I encourage you all to read it, because it's more of adapting to the needs of each person and community than having a list of more detailed adaptations. For the annex of the protocol in the good practices, we do go more in detail about what can be done if accessibility wise. So the examples that Sheila mentioned about having a quiet space, including breaks, all that came from suggestions from people with psychosocial disabilities, but that doesn't mean that only those can be done. So the idea is to work collectively towards accessibility. And thank you for the space to add to that response.
Thank you, Alana. Thank you. Thank you for explaining that. Julie, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I'd just like to add to Anne Greenwood's comments on the hearing disability, which I'm experiencing at this time in my life. And just to localize myself, I'm a 76-year-old white woman with gray hair sitting in my hotel room here in New York City. One of the things that has happened a couple times in CSW, twice specifically, I was in parallel events where somebody said, "Oh, I don't need a microphone." And, I would always raise my hand and said, yes, we need a microphone, because that's a really discounting kind of thing. Somebody says, "Oh, I can project." Well, that's not true. We hear differently. And actually, our UU minister, Erica Hewitt, wrote a beautiful piece about this, about all the disability and gender equity, or not gender equity, but equity issues in that that simple thing of saying, oh, I don't need to have a microphone. So I'm out there advocating for microphones. So just so you know, add that to your backpack for advocating for hearing impaired. Thanks, Beth, and all of you.
Okay. Any reaction to the microphone suggestion, among others?
Yeah, thank you so much, Julie, for sharing your experience. And I think that is a very illustrative example of the barriers that feminists with disabilities face every time that we want to go into a space to talk about gender equality, and we're left with having to talk about accessibility issues every time. So the hope is that with the feminist accessibility protocol, that won't be the case, and that we will be able to engage in the substance of issues. And hopefully this will also help people realize that you don't need a microphone. It's not about you, it's about everyone, and everyone includes women and gender minorities with disabilities as well. And we want to be a part of the conversation in the feminist movement, and in every space where our rights are being discussed and decided. It is really important to have the measures, the accessibility measures in place, and particularly because it is not difficult to include, to use the microphone. You have it there. So I definitely that resonates with me, and I share that sense of frustration to that illustration. So just thank you so much for sharing your experience, and hopefully it won't be repeated again.
Yeah. So I think that's a really, really important point, that women with disabilities want to be involved in the substance of the conversations, in the substance of the issues at the UN or in any forum. But these accessibility issues are barriers to them, getting to the table, getting that seat at the table because of the barriers. So remove the barriers so they can take part in the substance of what's going on, of the substance of gender equality. Sheila, any thoughts?
Yeah, I like what Julie said about, we hear differently. That's right. I mean, even among, I think, of course, everyone is diverse, and women, girls, and gender diverse persons with disabilities are very diverse. We have different accessibility and support requirements. So, involving us, consulting us is really a way to learn about that. So, organizers and can provide our specific requirements, and do not put their efforts as well in waste, because I mean, if you treat people generally and they end up not using the service or the accessibility feature and support requirement that you provided, because it's not based on what they need, everything will be put into waste. The effort, the time, and the resources. Yeah.
Good. Okay, does anyone else have a question out there? We have a few minutes left. If anyone else would like to ask a question or make a comment, raise your hand. Patricia.
Thank you. Good afternoon from Nigeria. I'm sitting in my bedroom. My video is off. I'm having a braided hair. I'm in complexion. I'm a wheelchair user. I'm an executive director, Equal Basic Development Initiative. I want to commend each and everyone's input here. The purpose for the accessibility protocol, I'm equally a member of Inclusive Generation Equality Collective. I'm equally part of the team that developed this accessibility protocol. You know, we have different diverse disabilities. One of the purpose for this protocol is to equally create awareness that there are diverse disabilities, and then there is need for every feminist with disability to be captured in every in-person or online discussion on gender equality. So that is why you see we work with different diverse disabilities. And to equally appreciate her, sorry, I may not remember your name, the lady that just spoke about making case for the use of microphone is critical, because if you don't have a particular need of something, that does not mean that another person does not have need for it. So that is why this accessibility protocol is critical for every stakeholder that is promoting gender equality, to make sure that you capture the needs and concern of every feminist with disability, create an enabling environment for
I think we're losing the connection a little bit there, Patricia. It sounds like we're losing.
Accessibility. I just wanted to add this too. I wouldn't have the connection had problem.
Yes, it was a little bit of a problem
trying
at the end there.
to point out is that inclusion, accessibility, and inclusion participation for every woman with gender issues or human rights issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Virginia, Sheila, you comment on that?
Oh, sorry, I was trying to unmute myself and couldn't do it. Thank you so much, Patricia, for your intervention. And Patricia actually mentioned there's also a member of the collective, and it's been really amazing to be witnessing all of the work that women like Patricia and Sheila have been doing, and witnessing how the collective is growing, and how they're advocating for the rights of women with disabilities. So it's nice to see more colleagues here again talking about this and reaffirming the commitment to an very inclusive gender equality movement. Sheila, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, thank you, Beth and Virginia, and thank you, Patricia, for that intervention. It's really lovely, to learn with other feminists with disabilities, women, girls, and gender diverse with disabilities from another country, from another context, from another impairment group. But because the truth is we're not experts of we're experts of our own impairment groups. I mean, we know what are accessibility and support requirements, but it doesn't mean we totally know what other accessibility and support requirements our other colleagues have. So, having these kinds of interactions and collective actions also help us to better understand and to be more aware of the different accessibility and support requirements of our colleagues. And again, it's a very diverse concern for everyone.
Yeah. Well, to kind of wrap this up, I do have one question. Sheila, you mentioned in your presentation about allies, that organizations that focus, like yours and Virginia, yours too, that focus on women with disabilities. You also seek out allies from other NGOs, from governments. Can you say a little bit more about that, about the need for allies?
Oh yeah, definitely, because we cannot we cannot do this alone. I mean, we are a group with the concern. We are the service users. We are the ones advocating for it, but we want to have allies. We want to have a support from different organizations, not just to make the advocacy to make the advocacy louder, and also um uh this thing should be done not just at the international level, but also at the local level. And disability is a cross-cutting issue. It's not only about the disability sector, but also it cuts across gender and other areas. And also um uh these allies would you know of course, if they know about the protocol, and if they also promote this will be part of their organization, on how they, not just how they conduct their meetings and events, but also as how they program they design their projects. And this and subscribing to the protocol means that they're ready to involve women, girls, and people of diverse genders with disabilities. And of course, I mean, looking at the sustainability aspect of it, being accessibility, be realized in a progressive realization of accessibility. um it's really important that states, governments are involved, because of course they have the resources as well. Yeah, and of course, having allies is really a representation of solidarity of what we do, and really saying that we're really with you, we're really in this for gender equality and equality of everyone.
Yes, yes, solidarity. Virginia, any final thoughts?
Yeah, just wanted to echo what Sheila is saying. I don't think that we can do it alone. We need to work collectively, and we need allies. And so I think there is so much power in working together to achieve our goals, whichever are our goals. And not only, I mean, we are working at the intersection of gender and disability, but there are so many other intersections that also intersect with disability. For instance, racial justice, for instance, immigration issues, and we need to work together. I think the working together and collectively is the answer for not only for our movement, but particularly.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Virginia.
much for the opportunity to be here today. I really enjoyed being here, and thank you so much, Sheila, as well.
Yes,
been
yes.
great.
Well, thank you both of you, Virginia and Sheila, for sharing so much information with us, and really raising our awareness. And I mean, there's so much more I understand and to think about. And so I'm very glad that we at IWC chose this topic for our event at CSW this year. And thank you all for attending this event. And you can find the recording. You will be able to find the recording to this event on the IWC on our YouTube channel. So it will live on after today. And once again, thank you all for attending this event, and especially Virginia and Sheila for sharing so much with us. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth, and thank you everyone for this opportunity. Happy to be here.
Thanks.
Thank you, Virginia.